Welcome to the Beyond High Performance podcast, featuring content and conversations from me, Jason Jaggard, along with our elite coaches at Novus Global, their high-performing clients, and the faculty at the Meta Performance Institute for Coaching. On this podcast, you'll hear some of the world's best executive coaches and high-performing leaders, artists, and athletes discuss how they continue to go beyond high performance in their lives and businesses.
Some things that have helped me. I think one thing is that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. So in different seasons, it's like energy stewardship for me. And so like, how am I stewarding it? Because with my kids, there might be more energy intense seasons. So then what am I doing to fill back up? A key thing for me has been, I have margins everywhere. I don't do anything back to back.
So welcome again to On Coaching. I'm Jason, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with three of my favorite people that we don't really get to be around each other that much. We see each other on the screens every now and then, but we have Amanda Jaggard, who is the co-founder of the Institute for Meta Performance, and she created that with me several years ago. Say hi, Amanda.
Hello.
And then we have the one, the only, recovering from all the things, Jon Roberts. Great to have you back in the studio. He's one of our top performing coaches. He's one of the best coaches I've ever seen in my life. And he was our director of development for several years. And we're really glad to have him on the show. Say hi, Jon.
Hi, everybody.
And you look terrific. And then also Dan Leffelaar, the director of Novus Global Sport, which he oversees all the work that we're doing with all the professional athletes and all the sports. And we're happy to have Dan on the show as well. Say hi, Dan.
Hello, everyone.
Wonderful. So the topic that we're talking about today, we're actually really excited about. And we're really excited to explore this together, even as we continue to wrestle out what this means for our work and our lives. And so one of the quotes that oftentimes we will tell clients is, if you don't know how something can be abused, you're probably in danger of abusing it. And that's true of anything. An easy example is the idea of empathy. Brene Brown kind of made the idea of empathy very, very popular. And then a lot of people started putting empathy at the center of their life. But then also I got introduced to ideas like Jean Marie Jobs, who's a colleague of ours, a very talented executive coach, introduced me to the idea of empathy extortion, which is where you demand empathy from others and actually manipulate people to get empathy from them. Or even Jon introduced me to a book called Against Empathy, which talks about the ways that empathy can be misused and actually get in the way of problem solving. And it's not saying that empathy is bad. It's just saying empathy is, and then there's healthy expressions of empathy and unhealthy expressions of empathy. In the same way, and by the way, some of you may already be rubbed the wrong way, because oftentimes when people put something at the center of their lives and you suggest maybe there's an unhealthy expression of that, we take it personally. So in that same spirit, we're going to be talking about the idea of meta performance. If you've been around our world for a while, you've heard this idea of meta performance, the idea of constantly reinventing what you're capable of, constantly reinventing what high performance means for you. And part of what we do for a living is we coach people into meta performance. We go into companies, and the three of us, Jon, Dan, and Amanda, have spent a lot of time, several years, working with companies at scale, working with teams and helping them build what we call meta performing cultures, and helping them create cultures where everyone in the organization is seeking to go beyond high performance. And so we want to practice, what we preach and swallow some of our own medicine in the idea of, okay, let's take the idea of meta performance and how can meta performance, the idea of meta performance, be abused, specifically in the idea of burnout, energy. If someone's always striving, always going 110%, and then all of a sudden you get tired, or some of the things we've been hearing from some of our favorite clients is they've got people on their team, or sometimes it's them. They say, hey, like, I worked with Jon, or I worked with Dan, I worked with Amanda, and it's like, I couldn't believe what we accomplished. And our teams are getting bonuses and doing happy dances in the hallways because all this is up and to the right and it's all very exciting. And then all of a sudden we get really tired. And then all of a sudden we get
run out of gas.
We run out of gas. So that's the tension that we're going to be kicking around in this conversation. So the first question I wanted to start with, and I'm going to ask it a little bit and we'll probably cut this part out, but the first question I want to ask is, does meta performance lead to burnout? And so, I'm going to kick that to the three of you, and I can see if, obviously you can't, if you're listening to this, you can't see anything, but Amanda is doing I'm pondering face. So let's, anybody can take a swing. What do you think? How would you respond to that? If someone says, "Hey, meta performance, I'm becoming a meta performer. I'm practicing with my team, and it's leading to burnout." Is that what meta performance does?
Yeah, my answer is no. If that's what's happening, you don't understand what meta performance truly is as a total conversation. And so I could go deeper into that answer, but that's my first answer.
Yeah, well, we will come back to that. Let's put a pause there just for a second, and maybe Amanda and John have similar answers. But hey, go ahead, John.
Yeah, no, I think that's where the term meta performance might get misused, and I might say, like, I might generalize it more. Life leads to burnout. Like, I think the human condition of living will inevitably lead to burnout, which is why meta performance is so beautiful. The idea of constantly reinventing, and we can probably get into this deeper later, but a key question whenever we're doing the work of greater results and greater performance, I always ask, like, are we loving this? Do we enjoy this? Is it worth it? Because and that's a very honest question, because, like, I'm thrilled when people look at me after 6, 12, 18 months and they go, like, no, it's just like my life's better than it's ever been before, and I'm bored or I'm tired, and I'm like, fantastic that we've realized that. Now what do we get to do with it? And so I almost expect burnout, and even, in the lives of my clients. And then it's fascinating. I'm in a phase of my life where I think burnout snuck up on me a little bit, where I was like, oh, my life's amazing. And then a few things happen, and you start going, oh, interesting, blind spots, huh? Fascinating that those lived there.
What's weird about that, John, is you're talking like there's this, maybe it's a cultural conversation, but there's this kind of typical sort of story about somebody who's in their career in their 30s, and then they get to their 40s and they have this midlife crisis, or they burn out. There's a lot of books on burnout right now. And I've heard leaders talk about this and say, like, it's inevitable. Like, there'll be a season of your life when you just hit the wall. And it seems like it's a very consistent conversation, which makes me just I wonder about that. And what's interesting is to hear the arc that happens. It's like you hit this wall, and then you reinvent yourself, and you learn these new skills, or you clarify what you really care about, and then your life moves on. And what I think actually meta performance is a practice of that before it happens to you. It's like you begin to choose it. So maybe we're going off track here, Jay, but that's what comes.
I think it's a key point, because I think it's interesting, Dan, that you bring up midlife. I think the meta performance conversation that we get to introduce into the lives of individuals and teams and companies is what's amazing about it is it starts asking them the question, who are you? What's important to you? What's your value system? Which I think the reason most of the time people wait till midlife is like the pain gets, like, there's a reason it happens at midlife, the pain finally. And it's almost like the human's last, like, will to live before they fade off into existence. I see us introducing that through meta performance early on. Who are you? What do you want to do? What's important to you? Who do you care about? What's your realm of impact? And once you start that conversation, it's like, cool, well, we're on. And it's interesting. It's almost like a matrix. Like, once you've taken the pill, can you ever go back? I often think about it. It's like, can you ever go back to ignorance? Once you've had the conversation. So
yeah, I like that. Amanda, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, for me, there's a difference between achieving and meta performance.
Say more about that.
Like goals versus
Well, so I'm a type 3 on the Enneagram. So I've grown up loving to achieve and perform and accomplish. But to me, meta performance, I think it's what you guys are all saying, like, it's so much deeper than that. It's not just about achieving. So I think, like, when I talk to a lot of people in their 40s and midlife, like that, which is where I am right now. So it is there. And it's like, oh, people have spent so much time achieving, but they haven't asked these larger, deeper questions about who am I, like what you guys were saying. And so I think when we make it all about achieving and performing, that's where then it can get lost.
Yeah, and say more about that. Like, what's the difference? How would you define achieving and how it can lead to burnout? And by the way, I think John and Dan and I are going to let you get away with labeling yourself as a number and some assessment that somebody made.
I was like, is that like Instagram? That's what I wanted to say, but I didn't do that.
So I think what you meant to say was that you took an assessment, and the of the numbers, the one that resonated with you the most was the number 3.
Yeah, one time.
Can I actually?
Well,
go ahead.
Oh yeah, because I hear if there's a distinct. I mean, if you were going to say there's a distinction, and achieving is one half, what's the other side of the distinction that's not achieving? What's the healthy expression of that?
Well, I think it's incorporating all the rules of the game. So I can achieve, but at the cost of what? And there's been seasons of my life where I was so about achieving something that I was willing to pay any cost, whether it be my health, my relationships, in order to achieve that. But to me, meta performance is incorporating, like setting it like rules of my game for myself. So I'm in this for the long haul, not just the short term win of necessarily achieving. And I think that there's a season for that sometimes too. Like Beyonce's Homecoming, she talks about like she just had twins and had a C-section, and 10 months later she's doing Coachella to get her body back in shape. She almost died giving birth. And she's like, it was amazing. And she got to do that incredible thing. And she said, I will never do something like that again.
Well, and by way of metaphor, because as you were talking about that, Amanda, it was like clicking in my head. It's like achievement is like, so unfettered growth, like just growth for the sake of growth. That's called cancer, right? Mm-hmm. But when growth is in alignment with a system, like the body repairing itself, and it is connected with all the other systems, and the impacts of those systems are being paid attention to, there's a holistic, healthy version of growth that exists versus like a just growth for the sake of growth. So that's kind of a helpful metaphor for me to hang my thoughts on in terms of what you just said, because it lands for me.
Which brings up, Dan, and this I haven't really ever thought about this before, but when you drop meta performance into a culture or into a team, an interesting conversation would be to have around trust. Because like when we talk about growth and when we talk about meta performance, to have that conversation and to be willing to take that on as a team, we have to trust in the same way that the body is going to heal itself. We have to trust that it will do that, and that it will, that it won't overreach and that it won't go too far. I find often when people are considering meta performance, do I want to grow? Do I want to, leave the safety of the comfort of what I know to go answer some of these questions, like, will I get hurt? Will I burn out? Will it be too much for me? Will they ask for more? Yeah. I find all those to be reasons people stay. They're like, no, it's safe over here.
Well, and there's a deeper conversation that happens too, because I think like when you start thinking about a goal, like a particular goal, and then you start asking those questions, and then you start, I think, asking one of the more powerful questions, which is like, who would I need to be to do that? One of the answers is probably healthy. You know, so I would, how would I need to upgrade even the way I rest? And that, how would I need to upgrade the way I care for myself in order to, like, I'm training for an Ironman. I've been training for an Ironman for 3 years because of the pandemic. Right. So there's like it's like the never ending Ironman training. But like, there's this idea, like there's my goal, but if I don't train for it, if I don't upgrade my diet and I don't upgrade a lot of the rest and the rituals and all those things around it, I will die. Like I might achieve the goal, but my body will completely fall apart. So I think meta performance is not just about the goal, it's about the whole system of upgrading the individual to achieve that, rest included.
The Ironman is a really good example. An Ironman, triathlon, marathon. It's amazing at what the body can go achieve, right? It's amazing at what you can go out and achieve. It'll destroy your body and could have long-term consequences on it, and you'll hate probably the few remaining weeks. Versus the person who jumps into the process and who says, no, I want to do that Ironman. I've never done it before. It's a massive challenge for me. I'm going to get to change the way I train. I'm going to get to learn new ways. I'm going to hire these trainers. I'm going to hire these coaches. And often when that's a disciplined person, and often they love the process, right? And their body loves I don't know if your body can ever love an Ironman, but as much as it can, because it said, oh no, this is the game we're playing. I've been prepared. That's an interesting compare and contrast to me between just achievement. Hey, could you do it? Probably. But at what cost versus someone who's committed to a meta performance goal.
Yeah.
In that
there's
way.
a few things I'm hearing there. One is, in some ways, when we're talking about meta performance, it is kind of a don't try this at home. Like don't do this by yourself. It almost like requires a team to walk with you and to pay attention, a greater sense of attention to your leadership metrics, your biometrics, your emotional metrics, those types of things. And that, I hear Dan saying that a huge component of meta performance is stepping up your rest game. Probably all three of us have heard and I'd be curious to see I don't know if Beyonce, if she talked about this in the documentary, but I think it was LeBron James. I heard an interview with him where he talked about how much he slept and how he sleeps like 12 hours, and you would look at him and be like, somebody who's stupid might say that's lazy, but because of how he treats his waking hours, it demands that kind of rest. And so as you are engaging in this, and one of the things that it would be great, I think we can continue to grow in helping companies understand, is there needs to be a equal proportionate upgrade of resting as you upgrade your performance.
And even to go along with rest, I like the word lifestyle. Like it's not just we're gonna double the revenue goals. It's like a fundamental lifestyle change. Like your work life should look different, your home life should look different, and that's a good thing. And that's the key point, because humans are just inherently terrified of change.
Well, John, I don't want to run past something you just said, because I think a lot of people pick goals and then try to cram their current lifestyle towards the new goal.
Yes.
So they're like, oh, like that's kind of been my approach, like self-confessed person who doesn't know how to upgrade himself very well. So shameless plug for hiring people to help you. But right. But like, and John, Jason, and Amanda, all the people all these coaches on this call have coached me directly. And this is something that I've realized is a strategy that I often employ is, I have a goal. I'll just work harder. Like I'll just put my head down. Yes. I got on my bike a month ago and rode 200 kilometers. What's that? 130 miles or something like that in one time. Cause I wanted to just see what that felt like. Now that seems like a crazy thing to most people, but very much with that mindset. Like I haven't really been training for this. I'm just going to put my head down and do it. I couldn't walk for properly for a week. Like my knee was all jacked up because that's often my approach. My approach is, here's my current lifestyle. I'll just pick crazy goals and then jam my lifestyle into it. And that, I think, is what a lot of people do. Like the hustle culture is about. And I don't think that's a great way to go about it.
No.
Dan, I love that. It's thinking in like for me, as you're saying that, it's thinking in terms of systems. Like my life doesn't exist in a vacuum. Goals I set for myself don't exist in a vacuum. So like I think about, like I'm looking at all the areas, like so I'm looking at my parenting. So I'm looking at how I'm showing up as a mom and taking care of it's like all these things are factored in. And it's working it out so that the vision, to me, meta performance is kind of this idea of I can have it all. And so.
And the problem is, I think people start down that rabbit trail or conversation about goals, and then they back off them because they're not willing to reinvent their lifestyle.
Or
they're not like, what if, hey, to achieve that, I'm going to change the whole system? Well, goodness, that seems like a lot of work. But what John was just saying is like, when you begin to think about achieving things that you've never done before, and then you think about the lifestyle that's going to be required to achieve it, that's where things start unlocking in incredible ways. That's where I start to think about myself in a completely new way.
Amanda, did you get to finish your thought?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think where, Danny, even just what you were just saying, like that's where transformation happens. And to me, again, I think that's the difference between achieving and truly transforming. So I can achieve and go hard after something. And Dan, to your point, I can just work harder, work more, all the things and push it. Like we all have that muscle of, suck it up and push through. But to me, the transformation of myself, my character, the character of those around me, it bleeds into everything. And for me, that's what meta performance looks like.
I might push back on one thing, Amanda, when you say anybody can do that suck it up thing. I disagree. I think that our culture, and especially the teams and the workforces, that has been the go-to, like who is strong enough, who are the strongest among us that can suck it up, that can take on enough, push through, and they rise to the top. And then they try to gather teams of people who can do that. And then that often becomes your leadership at the top. And I think there's major costs that come from that, from even managing talent and calibrating talent or identifying talent from that scenario. Because it is. And I tell my clients all the time, I say, because often they'll come to me and they'll be incredibly strong at being able to sacrifice things in their life to get something that they want. They're good at that. They're disciplined. They can do it. And I say, hey, I love that you have that skill. I love that we know that we can do it that way. So we don't have to get rid of it. We don't have to destroy it, but let's set it on the shelf. And then if we're going to use it, let's be real with each other. Like, hey, in the next 2 weeks, this is what I'm going to choose to do. And I love that clarity, because then we're not surprised. And then 2 weeks later, we can have a separate conversation around, okay, hey, Dan, how was the 130-mile bike ride? Like, what happened to your knee? Do we need to do anything for that? Because eyes wide open, we did that thing and we used that tool.
Yeah.
So
what I hear you saying, Jon, is for some people, it's not that they have access to that muscle, it's that muscle is accessing them. And oftentimes it's unconscious. And then we build these unconscious cultures where we're just compulsively striving and achieving without taking a step back and thinking, am I being masterful and surgical with that muscle and with that ability?
And I like the way you said creating cultures of that, because what then happens is you get a very top heavy leadership organization of these, we can do it, we're strong enough. And then it becomes an us against them, with the bottom half of who are going, no, we never said we could do that. We never said that we could suck it up and get it all done. We never claimed to have that skill.
Well, it's interesting. I was going to mention this a few minutes ago, but I'd like to throw it out there. Whenever you hear people talk about burnout, oftentimes they associate it with high performance, or in our context, people will say, hey, we were high performers, now we're trying to be meta performers, and now we're burning out. What's interesting is I don't know if there's a correlation between burnout and what level of performance that you're at. Like, I know low performers who burn out. I know performers that burn out. I know high performers who burn out. And of course, meta performers who burn out. It's an interesting thing that burnout actually isn't correlated with how competent you are, or even where you are in the organization, or how hard you work. It does seem to be related to something else.
Yeah. Even as you're talking, Jason, I'm going, what is the working definition of burnout?
I've been Googling it recently. I guess there's books on it and articles on it, and a few things. One is like where you don't have any motivation anymore, where it's almost like a form of chronic boredom or depression, where there's like fatigue. There's the things that used to excite you don't excite you anymore.
It sounds like low grade depression, or lack of like you're things you used to be motivated to do or engage in no longer hold any sort of gravitational pull for you.
Yep. Stress, a decreased satisfaction in things that used to give you pleasure. And what's interesting about that is that in some ways, and I don't know if this is relevant to the conversation, but I want to be careful that we don't say, hey, be careful about being a meta performer or you're burnout, but rather to say, hey, here are things that lead to burnout, whether you're trying to be a meta performer or not.
Well, and again, I like to go back to the very beginning of our conversation so far. I think putting meta performance on one end of a scale and putting burnout on the other, is that dichotomy is false.
That doesn't
work.
That's
really what I want to really be clear about, because I think the moment you do that, the moment you put that as a dichotomy, it changes the nature of the way you're going to approach even those concepts.
Yeah.
To think that, meta performance inevitably will lead to that, versus no, meta performance is about escaping that at some level.
Well, when people hear meta performance, this idea to reinvent, to grow, to explore what you're capable of, it's almost like more. That's what they hear. They hear more,
more. Yeah.
and it frightens them. Whereas what we're kind of talking about is it's a more of a state of being, and it's almost like, hey, wherever you're at, whatever level of performance you're at, like what is your state of being? Like, do you wake up every day full of life, ready to go? And almost, if you were, what would you then want to go do? It's a different conversation. One is like movement along a timeline. I'm here now, I need to get there, versus one is like, hey, I care about my level of existence in this present moment. And so, but based on that, here's what I'm going to choose to do with my life, my job, my career, my growth.
Now, what have you?
I'm curious, Jay. I was going to ask a question, so we can cut this out if we want. But I am curious, like, personally, what's our own experience of burning out, particularly? Like, we're in a conversation with 4 people that I think are notorious for not necessarily knowing how to rest well. I don't know if that's true or not, actually, but.
Well, so a couple of things that come to mind for me, and I'm curious what other people think as well. And we'll get into practical tips for rest. And
exactly. Yeah.
In a second, and I think people will be served by that. We oftentimes say that coaching is a contact sport, and like meta performance is a contact sport, so you have to build seasons of rest in. But also, I find oftentimes it's like filling a water balloon up to see where the holes are. And I think that I use meta performance in part in my own life, like striving for growth, striving for reinvention, striving for thinking about what's next and how can I expand my capacity to do whatever it is that I want to do. What I notice is the more I lean into that, it exposes cracks. It exposes ways I'm not managing myself well. It exposes things that can hide at a lower level of performance. And so when I lean into it, I think sometimes people look at, oh, you're seeing all these cracks and you're seeing all these the leaks in the ship, and that's a problem. And so then the solution is to slow the ship down versus learn how to patch the ship up. And so I think that's been my experience is as I lean hard into this, it's never how do I slow down, although I'm totally an advocate of slowing down to speed up, but that's always a secondary question for me. It's always how do I upgrade my ship so that I don't have to slow down. And I wouldn't know how to upgrade it if I hadn't have, spent the motive in the first place.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, and that's, it's an interesting thing because we'll talk about like not judging things or even the idea around what we resist persists. And so if I create this like judgment around burnout that it's bad. So when I notice it, then like something's wrong, something's bad. Now I'm going to be afraid of it. And so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to avoid that happening because it's bad. But Jason, what I hear you saying is like, it's not bad. It's just, it's a sign, it's information, and you get to take that information and do something with it.
It's diagnostic. I mean, imagine if when Dan, after riding his bike and was super, super tired or sore as he trains for the Ironman, if he would get like mad at himself for being sore after a workout. It's like, or judge himself for being sore after a workout.
Well, and actually what's funny about that was what that ride revealed to me was that I have a chronic issue with part of my knee that will reoccur if I don't treat it. And so I texted, I work with some of the best athletes in the world. They work with some of the best physical therapists in the world. And I texted one of the therapists of one of the guys that I work with and said, hey, like, can we get on a call? Can you show me how to fix this? And it very much is describing, I would not, because if I hadn't have done that ride in my head, I'm like, oh, it's probably going to be okay. It probably won't be a big deal. After a ride, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have to run after riding that far on that knee, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's very much describing what your boat metaphor, I think, is helpful.
Well, and I think for me too, I think all of us are either currently seeing a therapist or have seen a therapist in the last year. And hopefully that's not outing anybody in a way they don't want to be.
John is my therapist, and he came to Calgary just to therapize me. Is that the word?
Usually, so usually we're pretty open about the helping professions and things and the tools that we access. And a quick story that I was thinking of around this, because there is a cost to meta performance, and it's not good or bad. It's just there's a cost to it. And an example of that is I remember I used to live in Beverly Hills, and I was having dinner with a friend of mine, and I got a text from another friend of mine in Australia saying, "Hey, my niece or something was in. She's an agent. She's an Australian agent with actors. She's going to be in Beverly Hills. Could you, and I know you're having dinner, could you invite her last second to dinner so she has someone to hang out with?" And I said, "Sure." So he told her where we were going to be, and she walked in and joined us. And she was this vivacious, very, very energetic. Like she walked in the room, and the whole room lit up with her energy and thinner. And that is only important because of a part of the story I'm about to tell you. So we're having dinner together, the three of us, and I maybe asked like an icebreaker question, like, what's one thing about you that no one would ever guess? And she said, she probably weighed at that point maybe like 150 pounds, something like that, maybe between 125 and 150 pounds. And she goes, "Oh, something that you probably wouldn't guess about me, Jason, is that I used to weigh 350 pounds." And I thought she had gotten the measurements wrong, from kilograms to, not that it works that way, but that was, I was like, she can't possibly.
You can't convert stones to pound.
You don't really mean that. And she pulled out a picture of herself a year and a half ago, and she weighed between 300 to 400 pounds. And we had the most interesting conversation afterwards. And part of it was diet and things like that, but she also had some major surgeries and things like that to take care of that. And what she said was, Jason, changing your body is actually pretty easy. Changing your perception of yourself is actually really hard. And people who go through that kind of dramatic alteration of their physical being, they have to go to therapy in order to talk through the fact that they aren't. And like, she's like, the attention that I got from men radically changed. That was a huge adjustment. Like all of these things, my whole life changed. And there's, for lack of a better phrase, trauma or grief that goes with rapid change, even if it's a positive change. And I think one of the things that is important to say to teams and people who are experiencing rapid change or creating rapid change for themselves is that you can expect a grief, you can expect a loss, you can expect a kind of psychological buckling of the system that you have, and that you have to build complementary systems to help you navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
really good.
That's all I have to say about that.
And that's all I have to say about that. Well, there's like, it's funny that you mentioned grief, like, or change. And so to be someone who's committed to meta performance and really exploring what you're capable of, it is a commitment to not only holistically thinking about things, ambitiously thinking about things, but also processing. And that's a form of self-care, caring for yourself, that is, I think, missed a lot in growth. Like, how often do we talk about handling success?
Yeah. That's right.
Well, like how, how often do we, your relationship got a lot better, and everyone's like, "Oh, that must be a good thing." It's like, well, it is a good thing, but it's also a different thing. So how do I? It's foreign. Like I am in a new country, and it's like culture shock. Like where you show up, and it's not that the culture's bad, or but there is a shock.
And the reason why I mentioned the story of the woman that I met was, I'm currently seeing a therapist, and my life has changed a lot. And every 12 months, it kind of changes a lot. And I need someone to talk through. I need someone to talk with and make meaning from. I'm a huge fan of talk therapy. And really, it's just the guy listening to me process and help connect the new dots that are in my life that weren't there 12 months ago, 6 months ago, or whatever. I have to continually process that, or I choose to. And that's part of the cost of constantly reinventing your world. Amanda, you were going to say something.
Yeah, the grief piece, I think, is actually really big, and something that I talk about a lot with my clients, because I think like they do experience this growth, and then they're in a new place, or they get a new job and they've left the previous job, or your friendships change, or your financial situation changes, and that changes where things that, like, places that you're at socially, or just all the different dynamics there. And people think, oh, like, this is so good. It's like getting married. Like after the wedding, a lot of times brides will have like a depression after the wedding. And it's like, yes, because it's a change. Like there's loss, like there. And so for me, I hold like growing and vision and grief very, they come hand in hand. And in order to learn how to grow well, we have to learn how to grieve well. And so it's actually like, it's a conversation I'll have with clients a lot. Like, what are the losses? How do you know how to grieve? And developing that skill as an important piece of growth in meta performance.
Well, and I think too, for me, it's interesting because I'm just reflecting on my own growth. And each of us probably has an area where we're paying less attention to. So for me, it's, I put my head down, I push things through. I don't necessarily slow down to celebrate or upgrade how I'm doing something. Those are the two biggest gaps. So like Jon and I regularly have these conversations where I'm like, hey, like, what are you doing? And Jason too. I guess we all do it.
That's right.
What are you doing to like celebrate that? In fact, my admin Juliet is fantastic. I had a client renew this week, and like that's a very common thing in my practice. It's not a shock, but she asked me, she's like, so how are you going to celebrate that? And even the slowing down to ask myself, am I going to celebrate? Do I celebrate things? Like, it seems so simple, but even to throw, a little bit of glitter up in my office and go, wee, like that would be probably really good for me.
Yeah.
You need pom-poms, Dan.
Exactly. Like,
you need my pom-poms.
Well, I think from an individual and even taking it back to the team and the corporate workspace is, do you care? Is it important to you how you feel? And this is an energy question, I think. And I think it can get lost. And I don't know if it's always a safe question amongst teams to go like, yeah, no, we've got it. We've got the goals, we've got the data, and like, how do we want to feel about it? How do we feel about it right now? What would we need to shift? Because that's even for you, Dan. It's like, hey, man, like, you're doing all these incredible things in your life. Like, do you want to be excited about them? Do you want to share them with other people? And it really depends. Some people might say, no, I could care less. I really don't. That's not important to me. I just want to keep pushing through and getting these results.
Well, but paying attention to that, I think asking that question of, hey, like, it's like when somebody says I'm really excited about something and they do not sound excited at all about it.
Yeah, tell your face that.
Like, why don't we pay it? And I love what you just said, Jon. Like, let's pay attention to how you're feeling about it. Like, what does that reveal where your energy is and where it's coming from and maybe what needs to be attended to? So,
yeah. And there's I think, so if people are listening to this, and if our clients who oftentimes are leading large companies are listening to this, I think what they hear oftentimes from their teams are, hey, I'm really tired, or hey, I'm scared to lean into this because you're just going to put more on me, or we accomplished this outrageous goal and we all kind of burnt the candle at both ends, and now they move the goalposts again, and now they're asking us to do it again. And I think there's an emotional spectrum that goes with meta performance. And frankly, one of the things I like about the meta performance conversation is it really kind of cracks you open to the full human experience. So you have, are you celebrating? Like Dan, it would benefit Dan and probably the four of us to celebrate well. And by the way, if you're pursuing meta performance and not celebrating, you're kind of cheating, and there's going to be a cost for that. It's like when you sprain your ankle, your favorite, and then you hurt your back. You're cheating the system. Celebration has to be a component of meta performance. Otherwise, you'll kind of deflate the tires. But then there's on the other side of the emotional spectrum, there's and I think this is, Jon, to your point, maybe a little bit, is hey, I'm scared to tell my boss, or I'm scared to tell my manager that this isn't fun, or I'm scared to tell my manager that I don't know how to do this, or I'm scared to tell my manager that I'm tired, or that this isn't fulfilling or isn't rewarding, or I'm scared to tell my manager that I'm burnt out. And I would love to hear the three of you talk about, what would you say as a gift to the manager? How can you equip managers who are pursuing meta performance on how to handle teammates who are saying, hey, I'm tired, this isn't fun, I'm burnt out? And then what would you say as a gift to team members who are reporting to a boss who's working with us, and they're saying, hey, take the hill, go, break your brain, expand the fence, all the phrases that we teach, and you're a team member and you're saying, I'm scared, or I'm tired, or I feel burnout, or whatever. I'd love to hear you address both of those groups of people in a way that could serve them and moving forward with that kind of tension.
I mean, I'll take a shot. My first, if as a leader or as a manager, if anybody ever comes and has the courage to tell you how they're feeling, burned out, tired, any of that, please don't solve their problem, and please don't answer it. Like, my advice is just to like pause.
Mm.
Like, because what I often see is when somebody chooses to share that, the leader, who is probably also has a lot that they're trying to do and a lot that they're trying to get done, that wave hits them, and what happens to them? They get scared. Oh no, I don't need this today. I didn't need this right now. And so then this is how we get into these cycles of where we're not having these conversations. So my dream, and even when I'm in teams, when those moments happen, I go, sweet, nobody say anything. Like, let's just live in the moment of the experience of what just happened. This is a beautiful new moment. Hey, cool. We're getting results, but it doesn't sound like we're getting them with the energy that we want, or with the idea. Like, I was just speaking with a leader last week. Hey, Jon, my team's getting incredible results, but they're reporting back that, it feels like we just ran a marathon, right?
Yeah.
That exhaustion, that tiredness.
Yeah.
Jon, I don't know if they're going to want to like go again this next year. And it's going, hey, that's a brilliant conversation. How do we have a life-giving conversation to go, hey, if we get to run a marathon again this next year, how do we, or call it whatever you want, how do we want to feel at the end of this next year?
Yeah.
Do we want to feel like we just got off a party at a yacht? Do
Yeah.
we want to just feel like, wow, are you kidding me? And I say all this to means we're introducing new. Like, if you pause and if you honor those moments, it allows individuals and it allows the team to start having new conversations that they've never had before.
Yeah. That's good, Jon. Amanda, you were going to say something.
No, I think the listening piece and the slowing down and not judging the complaint is really important. And I think that that's where, for leaders, it's the same with parenting. Like, if I'm not leading myself well, then I'm not in my adult self to be able to handle the complaints of my children. And so I think that there is like stepping in. If as a leader, I'm caring for myself and taking ownership of that, then I can hear the complaints without taking them on or feeling that shame about myself, or like needing to fix. And it's like, okay, like, listen, tell me more. I think that is an empathy piece. And I think that, to me too, there's like this, like, we've all been there. Like, you're not bad or wrong. Nothing is like bad about you, broken, wrong with you for having these feelings and these experiences. We've all been there. Tell me more. And Jon, I love you. It's like, how do we want this to go the next time? How do you want this to look? I think that those are really powerful questions to invite them into what it is that is occurring to them and that they need right now.
Yeah. So even just real quick. So then step number one, when someone comes to you and they're wrestling with burnout, it's 10 times more important to connect with them versus to correct them. Like, connect with them, empathize. It's a fantastic space for empathy. And again, I'm not an all empathy all the time guy, but I think it's an important first step in the conversation. The second thing is, as we mentioned at the beginning, if you don't know how something can be abused, you're probably abusing it. How a leader responds to a teammate when they are feeling burnout or tired will reveal whether a leader has weaponized meta performance or not. If a leader responds defensively, antagonistically, frustratedly, then in that moment, and no problem, but in that moment, I guess problem. In that moment, you've weaponized meta performance. And by the way, we'll get to the employees in a second, but in that moment, and one of the phrases I say sometimes is, when a leader turns on his or her followers, he's abdicated his right to lead. And so what does it look like for you to stay in a place of advocacy for the person? And obviously I'm talking to people who, in some ways, I'm a boss sometimes. And I know that that's a challenge for me sometimes, is to stay in a place of advocacy, to stay in a place of humility, to stay in a place of like compassion and care. Not that we can't still care about the mission, but that in that moment, it's important to connect.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan, you cut out, but Jon, go ahead while we get Dan's
I'll go. I think another tip, or something that I like to look for, and this can come from either the leader or the individual or both, is looking for broken agreements. like as great, now that we have new information on the table that somebody is feeling a certain way that they maybe aren't wanting to feel, do we have any broken agreements? Do we have any broken, did the leader not do things that they said they were going to do?
You're speaking, John, to something that came up for me as you were talking earlier, which is when somebody comes to you and says that they're burnt out or tired, that's revealing that something isn't working. Like there's something's not working. That's not the goal was never. And we got the result, and you died.
Go ahead, John.
Well, I was just saying, a meta performance culture, what Dan said is beautiful. Something's not working, and when a team and a company can move from the "hey, I'm feeling a certain way" to the beautiful new space of something's not working, then, and really it's almost like, where are you going to go from something's not working? A lot of people choose to go, it's their fault, this is never going to change, I've been here before. I think through meta performance, when you get to something's not working, we celebrate that and go, man, what do we get to do about it? Is there something, which is why I love to look for broken agreements, because here's the fun part. If there aren't any, and often there aren't, because people aren't really great at making agreements anyway. We live in a world where expectations are all over the place. So when it's like, hey, yeah, no, I feel this way, and we can't really find any agreements that have been broken. Well, fantastic. I wonder what new agreements could be made that would be new structure, that would be new scaffolding, so that this never happens again.
Yeah. I want to see where this goes for a second, just to push back a little bit. If I'm tired, if I'm exhausted, I want to suggest, and I'm open to being wrong about this, but I want to suggest that that's not an evidence necessarily that something's not working. And again, I want to go back to the Ironman training. You train for an Ironman, you're exhausted afterwards. You wouldn't say that that's not working. You just say that's what happens when you train for an Ironman a certain way. So it might mean that something's not working. It's a difference between.
Well, I guess it depends on the goal, right?
Hold on. It depends. What I want to suggest is it a complaint or is it an observation? If it's a complaint, then by definition, something's not working. So if you're tired and exhausted and you're complaining, and I don't mean that in a moral, in coaching vernacular, I know you all know what I'm talking about, but in coaching vernacular, if it's a complaint, then that's a thing. But if it's an observation, that's a different thing to solve for. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, yeah, like I guess it depends on the goal. Like if your goal is to finish the Ironman and not feel tired, like that's. So yeah, is it a complaint or is it an observation? I think is a really interesting distinction. I think, my assumption, and maybe this is the premise that we get caught up on a little bit, is that when somebody is coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'm tired," that primarily comes from a place of complaint. I don't want to be tired. I don't like how I feel. This shouldn't be the result of what we're doing.
Yes.
If that's the case, then and when I say something's not working, that could be in them, that could be in the system, that could be with the goal. But what John said is like, what if we sit in that question and start exploring? Like, well, if something's not working, let's fix it. Let's step in that together.
I think what Jason is saying is actually important, especially if you're a leader, to really lean into that. Hey, thank you so much for letting me know that this is here. Do we want a different outcome next time? Because that's like, hey, they're complaining about it. We want a different vision in the future. Or no, I just wanted to let you know I'm tired because no, I actually really love the job I just did. And of course I'm going to be tired. And
it's why I'm napping under my desk whenever you come into the office.
And I want to ask Dan and Amanda, who are both parents. It's a growth curve for me. I think this is something that parents learn faster than people who don't raise families. And it's a growth curve for me to realize that I can be simultaneously exhausted and happy. Because for a long time, I associated exhaustion with unhappiness, or even being sick with being unhappy. I can have a sore throat, or I can have a cold. But I remember a few years ago, I had this kind of aha moment when I was like, Jason, you can be sick, you can have a cold and not be unhappy. Those two things don't have to go together. And I'm looking at Amanda and Dan. Is that something that I'm assuming with parenting, the first year especially?
The most exhausting week of my life was when my children were born. Not more exhausting for my wife, I'll be honest about that. But I'll be careful. But,
yes.
Yeah, but Amanda's gonna reach to the screen and choke me. But one of the things that I noticed about that was I'd never felt more content, more full of inspiration in life, and yet I was physically exhausted.
Yep.
And I think the tiredness is what you sign up for. Like the first 6 weeks are so exhausting. Like the baby is up all the time. I nursed my kids, so it was me who was up with them in the middle of the night. You've just given birth, like it's, and like then you get. For me, it's like at 3 weeks you're just exhausted. But the circumstances of the baby last for a few weeks longer than that, and so there is this, and you get to choose what you make of it, and it's like, this is the season, this is what I signed up for, and I get to choose how I respond to that. And so
it reminds me of high performance athletics. Like if you get to the end of a game or a race and you're not tired, that's a problem.
You run it right.
That's the evidence that something's not working.
It's like, oh, that's not working. Well, that's true. Like if you set a world record and you're not tired, they're still like, wow, like I got to go faster. Like, so like, I feel like parenting, like it's kind of the same sort of metaphor where there are things that we want to be poured completely out for.
Yes.
And then that's a whole nother conversation of like, are the things you're expelling energy for worthy of that energy?
So slow down on that. That's actually really interesting, Dan. In the high performance athletic space, it makes so much sense, right? You train, you live your life in a certain way so that you can pour yourself out over the course of, a game, over a race, so that at the end, like one of your signifiers is like, I spent myself in a worthy way.
Yes.
To me, that correlation is not as clear when you move over into career and a workspace and a 9 to 5 or, however many hours people are working these days. And it's almost like, how do individuals create their own spaces to go perform? And even how this goes to team leaders. How are you setting an example and setting a vision and intention for your team to go, hey, this is what I think it looks like for us to go play the game this week, this month, this year. Hey guys, this is how I want our performance to look. This is how I want us to feel at the end. Like imagine if every corporate leader like had a great idea of like what their team would look like in the way that a sports team looks like, that where you're exhausted at the end, but you've given it all, and now you have a plan to go refresh your body so you get to do it again.
And that's the big thing, John, is I think, in all sport, there's a beginning, middle, and end. And it's very clear about, imagine an Ironman where you're running, and then as soon as the Ironman was done, the people running the Ironman said, surprise, you're going to run another one starting right now. And so I think it's important for leaders to think about, and in our coaching work, we even use the word sprints and saying, okay, here's a sprint, but then also, when does the game stop? I don't think employees most employees or teammates in companies are not against you moving the goalposts after a significant accomplishment, but maybe the missing piece is, what does the rejuvenation period look like between goalpost moving?
It's the rhythms. It's living. And Jason, our parents were both school teachers, and I would watch this like school rhythm, right? So you have the startup of school where there's a lot going on, and you have the close of the semester, and there's different things, but it was like this rhythm. And when I got out of the educational space, and sometimes there weren't necessarily these rhythms, these natural rhythms, like, oh, I need to take ownership and create that for myself, and create these rhythms. If you're not in a business or a work that naturally has those rhythms of extreme pouring out and then rest.
Yes.
Yeah. What's interesting is, as you're talking about this, like, so for anyone listening to this, I think about this in terms of our own team. Like, what are the rhythms that because we are in the, I would say, the embryonic stages of really developing these internally for ourselves and then for our culture. But if you're running a company or you're leading a team and you don't have any sort of rhythmic sort of structure to what you're doing, that's a fascinating notice. Like, oh, I just expect people to be at 8 all the time, like at an 8 out of 10 all the time. Like there's no, it's like, okay, well, like you can do that.
Yes.
My guess is they'll be running at 5s for most of the time. And that's the most performance you're going to get out of your team.
And it's worth noting, I did an interview with Juliet Funt for the Global Leadership Summit where we talked exactly about this. So we'll put that in the show notes. And she talks. She's brilliant at this. She wrote a book that just came out called Time to Think, and she talks about, like as an athlete, she does. I'm not sure if she uses the athlete metaphor, but you have practices and then you rest. You have games and then you rest. You have tournaments and then you rest. So what does it look like for you? She asked the question, what does it look like for companies to intentionally design collective synchronistic rest where everyone knows they're off the clock at this time? Which you're right, Dan, there's room for growth. I think for us, a lot of our work is very asynchronistic as well, because everyone's doing their own thing, right? Yeah. But there's another piece that I wanted to throw out. Oh, what was it?
There was something I wanted to jump into, just that you said a while ago too. So
yeah, okay, great. We'll come to you in a sec. We'll come to you right after this. So one of the things that I started doing with my coaching clients, and I don't have very many. The people on this call, Amanda, Dan, and John, have, I think, at least three times more clients than I do. So they've gotten a lot better, a lot faster than I have, because they're getting more reps. But one of the things that I've done with my clients is built in. We have our sprints, and then we built in a couple weeks of recouping between sprints, and so we'll still have sessions, we'll still meet, but it'll be a little bit of a okay. How did that last sprint go? What did we learn? How are you doing? How are you feeling? Then the next week we're going to do it again. How are you feeling? Let's take a little bit of a breath. Let's create a little bit of a space. It's kind of like water parks where you have the rocket ride of the tunnel slide, water slide, and then you land in the bottom, and it's this kind of ocean of rest and relaxation, and you were just in this high octane tube, and now you're floating in this tub. And like I've noticed with my clients, they really appreciate designing a tub after the tube in order to just relax and then kind of gird your loins and go up the ladder and get back in the tube again. And I think that could be a great question for leaders. I think, Dan, what were you going to say?
And this is a bit of a crazy transition, rough shift.
Do it.
Not crazy. Well, you said something earlier that it really knocked me back a bit. And it was, and I've heard you say it before, but I wanted to kick it around just for a minute. Was this whole idea that if leaders turn on their followers, they've abdicated their responsibility of leadership. Is the inverse true?
How would you articulate the inverse?
That if followers turn on their leader, they've abdicated their responsibility of followership.
Well, I would say if a follower, for lack of a better phrase, turns on their leader, they're not following anymore.
Yeah. So, well, and what's so interesting, and the reason I like that the reason that was resonating in my head is usually when burnout, at least my perception of burnout occurs for people, that's what happens. One of those two things: either if you're the leader and you're burned out, or you have followers who are burned out, we turn to the they're the reason why this isn't working. That seems to be like the de facto, like default downshift that I see in a lot of. So this is connected. Maybe it took me a while to get there, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, how blame is potentially one of the symptoms of a burnout system.
And I think that's a good point, and for both individuals and followers and leaders to look for is agency. Where is the ownership? Where is the agency? How can you have these conversations where where you're talking about a subject that's in front of you, but you still retain the agency? Yeah. Like I think that's a really weak muscle in a lot of people, to be able to have uncomfortable, difficult conversations about things that we might not have the answer on while retaining agency.
Yeah.
Right. We're so quick to say it's you, it's them, it's this, it has nothing to do with me. I find, especially around burnout.
Yeah.
Because once you realize that you're burning out, you almost start to get nervous. You start to freak out. It's like, oh no, I thought this was working, and now it's not.
For sure.
And your body it's almost like, I got to get rid of this. It's like, no, calm down. Like, great. You've now recognized that you're in a period of burnout, that the system that used to work for you no longer works for you anymore. Please don't give away your agency. That'll make this a much longer pathway back to getting out of this. So it's just a small point, something to look for.
That's brilliant, John. Abdicating your agency will actually speed up the burnout process, and then it becomes a vicious cycle versus a virtuous one. Yeah. And speaking of that, I want to pivot a little bit to, or as Jeff Lambert, who's one of our best clients at Lambert PR and Ticker, he would say, flip turn. He'll be
That's
very
from
happy.
swimming.
Flip turn. And by the way, so his whole mission in life is to help to get people to replace the word pivot with flip turn, because when you pivot, you actually lose energy, you lose momentum. But when you flip turn in a pool, you actually create momentum because you're springing off of the thing that you were pivoting away from or flip turning away from. Yeah.
All I'm thinking about is Ross Geller yelling pivot.
Pivot. Yeah. Flip turn.
I'm imagining all of us doing flip turns in a pool, and I'm trying to figure out who would be capable of a solid flip turn. Yeah, I'm like swallowing water sideways or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't do very good either. But so I do want to shift to, or flip turn to, the person who works for a manager. So we're hoping that our teams, our leaders, our CEOs, our C-suites, the managers who we work with, will see this as a resource for people on their teams. And so we come in, we jazz them up, we give them all these tools, we send them loose. They're going above and beyond. They're inviting everyone on their teams to go above and beyond. And sometimes it feels a little less like an invitation, a little more like a mandate or dictatorial.
You're going to get better.
You're going to, kind of a thing. And let's say you're now under the thumb of a leader who is sincerely doing their best to aspire towards meta performance, but you're getting tired. You're feeling burnout. Maybe you're losing energy, or you're kind of resenting the fact that we've come into your world in this very invasive way. What would you say to people on a team working for a leader who is all excited about this, but you're getting tired?
If I got to speak with them individually, I would really help them clarify what they're noticing, what they're feeling. Probably most importantly, I'd care about what they want. And to me, that conversation really only ends in two spaces. It ends in somebody figuring out, being able to put words to maybe how they're feeling, then being able to move past that into going, hey, okay, let me start putting onto paper what I would love. Because I don't think a lot of people have any clue. And I don't think we teach people how to spend time on figuring out what you want.
Yeah.
I think we spend a lot of time teaching people like, here, do this.
Do this.
And so often, like, man, imagine if individuals, I know the leaders I speak with love it when individuals come to them and say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. This is who I want to be and what I want my life to look like. Can we make that possible? The leaders I know are like, oh my goodness, who is this person? Well, what type of, this is a credit. Let me help you. Let me help you create that. And then I would say the alternative pathway that we find is someone who is committed to the old way of doing things. And that's a really interesting one. And especially I say interesting because I strive my hardest to stay out of the moral, good, bad, right, or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But we at Novus Global really believe in meta performance. And when a leader is committed to moving into exploring what they're capable of, not every individual is going to want to go there. Yeah. And I actually enjoy it when a leader and an individual and myself can sit there and go, hey guys, I think we found the misalignment, and we don't have to fight about it, and we don't have to spend the next 2 years making lives miserable about it. How do we now move in? Like, how do we make this the best ending we could ever imagine? Like, hey, leader, how long would you like this person? What would you, man, I'd love to have them for the next 6 months. Hey, individual, can you do that? But then how can the company help you find your next move? I think a lot of people roll their eyes when they first hear this, because it's like, no, you can't have that level of honesty. And there's no way. I think companies really get the back end of relationships wrong, like the termination. I think when you lead and have these open and honest conversations, the company can win, the individual can win. To me, the word is honor. I think all parties can be honored, even when an individual doesn't want to grow. It's like, great, like, thank you for your honesty. This is where the company's going. So how can we honor the ending of this? So those are my two ways I see it going from my perspective.
That is the reason why it's scary to bring up, by the way. It's scary for leaders to help people on their teams figure out what they want, because what if what they want is someplace else? And that's scary. And then, of course, for people on a team, it's scary to talk to your leader about what you want, because what if you want isn't what they want and you have to leave? So there's some stakes there. But I do like what you said, John, in terms of honoring. And if we're talking to a team member, what does it look like for you to talk about how you're feeling from a place of neutrality and honor for the person who's leading the company or the team? And I will say this there is a pain of following somebody that the person leading will never really understand. And conversely, there's a pain of leading that people following a person will never understand. And I think it's important for both parties to be empathetic towards the other around, hey, I know that you're in charge and that comes with a burden that I don't quite get. Just like having kids is a burden that I don't understand. And to say, hey, I want to talk about how I'm feeling, acknowledging that you've got your own pressures and things you're going on with. I think that goes a long way to just build on John's concept of honoring.
And I think this is a I don't know if it's a challenge, probably more of an invitation to any CEO or leader of a team or a company out there. Have a vision for how people leave your company.
Yeah.
And don't let that be a secret. Like,
Yep.
I think most people have a vision for how you onboard and how you hire. Like, have a vision for how people leave it. And imagine if you were able to talk openly about that amongst your team and say, hey, when it aligns that you're here, and when the vision aligns and when the growth aligns, it's awesome. And then we really value when it doesn't align anymore. Here's that process for us. And I actually think that takes a lot of the scariness out of it for most people, because it's like, oh my goodness, like, wow, these people are humans. They get it. Things change, circumstances change. And to me, that is life-giving to all parties.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Dan and Amanda, what else would you say to people who are feeling burnt out and feel like they're being dragged through this meta performance, all these shenanigans?
I think one of the things is back to the agency and the ownership conversation. So oftentimes when I'm talking with somebody and that's where they are, this isn't the first time that it's showed up for them. And oftentimes when we start looking at if there's a pattern somewhere, that maybe like that overwhelm, that burnout is something that comes up whenever they're going after a larger vision. And that's something that has maybe kept them where they are and isn't necessarily where they want to be. Or maybe this is showing up in other areas of their life too, when a new challenge comes their way that maybe they didn't ask for, which is kind of what happens in life. So like it probably is showing up other places. And so then it's like, hey, what if we look like, oh goody, like this is a fantastic opportunity to notice that this is something that's coming up. Let's pause for a minute, notice what's coming up for you, notice the beliefs that you're having about yourself, the beliefs that you're having about the outside circumstances, the beliefs that you're having about the goals, the beliefs that you're having about your teams. And let's really unpack those beliefs and those judgments. And then that gives them the opportunity to really do some exploring. And I think then the agency and the ownership then comes like, okay, great. What do you want to do with what you're learning right now? What do you want to do with those beliefs? Are those things that you want to keep? Are there things that you want to change? And ownership in that mindset. And then I think it is ownership around, okay, great. What do you want to do about it? There might be some self-leadership that goes on. There might be some requests that they could make. Like all sorts of things that they could then do. But for me, it's like the mindset and the agency piece
are the most important. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you think?
I think what John and Amanda said is really, really good. And they should.
Next question.
Yeah, exactly. But what's coming up for me was if you're on a team and you feel like you're being dragged through the process of growth, I just would invite you to consider the alternative and consider it honestly, because I think sometimes we resist the thing we're in, but not really truly think about what the alternative would be, and is that a place we want to live? So I think sometimes, like I know I've done this where I'm like, this sucks, I don't like this, but then when I slow down and think about what the alternative is, that sucks a lot more. and there is like, I don't have to, no targets. And, just kind of coast. And how would I feel in that system? And then begin to, and that kind of comes back to that agency conversation of, you do have a choice. You don't have to stay here. And to John's point, like if you're not aligned ultimately with the values and the culture of the organization, then it's good for everyone that you're not there, or you move on personally. But I think most of us, what's missing in most of our lives is the call to adventure, is the call to responsibility and growth in a way that involves us doing what we talked about earlier, like truly growing in a holistic way to rest better, to care for ourselves better, to achieve more. And if you want the alternative, which is like to not do that, I personally like go do it, but like be honest with yourself.
Yeah. And the cost of that, it's interesting. I look at some of the companies we work with, and probably if they were to plateau, they get maybe acquired and dismantled for parts, and there'd be layoffs, or competitors would put them out of business, or those types of things. So it's an interesting thing there. Okay, go ahead, John.
I want to make a note. It's from, I think, Dan's last sentence, but he said the phrase "be honest with yourself," and it's easy for us to say that. I think that's a challenge for most people. I think I see that a lot when working with one of the reasons to have a coach. I'm helping somebody to help me be honest with myself for what I really want, for what I'm really complaining about, for what's really wrong. And I mean, even when we think about employees at companies, often they try to segregate their life from their work. So their life might be falling apart, and then that might be a lot of their work complaints is just flowing it in. And so I'm trying to think, as we speak to the individual, it's like, yes, my dream is for you to be honest with yourself, but I also some people are like, I should just be able to be honest with myself. No, it takes time. It takes intention. It takes challenge, wrestling probably. And so give yourself the space to do that, I might say.
Well, that actually leads into my last question, which is, what are some of your favorite ways to rest? What are some of so with all of us, this ain't our first gig. And not only do we help companies create a meta-performing culture, but we try to embody that as well with us. And it's a contact sport, and things are changing. And I remember, for those who are listening, I think there's a photograph somewhere of the four of us at a restaurant, 4 or 5 years ago. And the company today is unrecognizable 5 years ago. Thank you, Dan. The company, so there's a picture, we can cut that out. There's a picture of us from 5 years ago. There's just the four of us, and that was the company, and fast forward 5 years, and there's over 50 of us on different continents and coaching hundreds of clients on over, I think, 16 different countries. And things continue to rapidly change. And so we know what this feels like. We know the pain. And in a lot of ways, frankly, I wouldn't say that a lot of that's driven by me. I would say a lot of that's driven, some of it's maybe driven by me, but a lot of it's driven by just our ethos and that's just kind of what we do around here. And that's the natural expression of a certain set of values that we have. So that being said, and I can of course share from my life as well, but with the three of you, how have you learned how to rest? How have you learned how to recreate? How have you learned how to maintain your energy so that you don't burn out?
I have learned a great deal over the last 5 years of working with the three of you about this. And there are two kind of big pieces for me. One is celebration. I brought that up earlier. I've really realized how not good at that I truly am. Celebrating myself, celebrating my achievements. We do acknowledgments as a part of our firm culture, but doing that, slowing down, there's an incredible amount of vitality and energy that flows from it. And it's simple. It doesn't take that much time. That's probably item number one. And then personally, and John and I probably share this. There's an old Hebrew line. I think this is out of the book Sabbath by Josh Heschel, but the whole idea of if you work with your mind, rest with your hands. If you work with your hands, rest with your mind. And I kind of do both, but now it's more mind than hands. So when I go do something physical, like ride my bike 200 kilometers, or John was up here and we rode through the mountains, like going to do something that's outside of the ordinary, that is not something I normally do, that gets me out of my context, that I find incredibly restoring. So prioritizing that, I think, is something that I didn't do very much of more than 5 years ago, and having a much more regular rhythm around that has really transformed the way I rest. That and sleeping. I'd always recommend sleeping. But.
Yeah, take a nap sometimes.
Yes, start with sleep. Oh my gosh, naps. I am a huge proponent. That's another thing. Guys, let's figure out napping in the corporate structure. Like I don't like meetings, always on. Like I love a good 10-minute, like it's truly like your mind cycles. That's all it does. And then it's like, okay, boots back up. But so I'm a big fan of that. I agree with Dan. I feel like I use my brain so much every day, and so physical exercise is massive for me. I love to surf, I love to run, I love to cycle. Just being outside, I think I'm very cognizant of how much time I spend indoors versus outdoors. And what's interesting about this conversation is how I used to rest 8 to 10 years ago is based on who I used to be, my old pattern, right? I would guard my energy. I would store things up in order to be able to achieve the thing we're talking about. Where I think as this whole time, as we're talking about metaphor performance and transforming and figuring out new ways to do new things, I would say my rest. I think I'm in the middle of this right now. I've sort of uncovered that I used to think I could only rest away from other people. I needed to be by myself. And now I'm actually realizing there's a wealth of energy for me around specific people. Specific people may be doing specific things. This comes from making requests.
Mm-hmm.
This comes from being clear about that. But I think that as I build my new, ship to go where I'm going to go next, I think that is actually, I wouldn't have guessed that 5 years ago. I would have guessed, nope, I know exactly how to rest. I know exactly how the system works. So I just need to get the most I can out of that. And now I actually find that my rest system is changing as I grow and change, and as my vision grows and changes.
Yeah, I really like that a lot, John. I think sometimes for me, when I get really, really tired, I think the last thing I want to do is talk to somebody. I talk to people all day. The last thing I want to do is talk to somebody. And one of my mentors these days is a guy named Dave Gibbons, and he's been asking me, who are the people that energize you? And then giving yourself permission to hang out with them. Or like, it's funny, so like I'll talk with John. John and I live pretty close together. So we'll get like a 45-minute to an hour dinner. And so we don't have to hang out for the whole night, but we can have like a quick drive-by dinner, or Dan and I will talk on the phone, or Amanda and I are related, we're siblings, and she'll send a text like, hey, sister call, or I'll send a text, hey, brother call. And I'd be like, or like Johan is another guy in our firm, and we'll just call and talk for a little bit, and I'll go for a walk. And before, it's like going to the gym. Beforehand, I would have told you, I don't have energy to talk to Amanda. I don't have energy to talk to Dan, or, hang out with Joe or John or whoever. But afterwards, it's always really rejuvenating. And it is a paradoxical truth that people have to master, that sometimes expending energy actually creates energy. There are places where expending energy creates energy, and it doesn't make sense.
And I think another on that topic, and as we think about teams and as we think about leaders doing this within their own, talking about this, like it's actually like I find that I get a lot of rest out of telling people that I'm tired, and out of being able to tell people about what I've been up to and what I've been going through. Like it's very, in a way, it's almost like it brings me into my life in a fresh way.
Yeah.
Some things that have helped me. I think one thing is that it's not a one size fits all thing.
For
So
sure.
in different seasons, it's like energy stewardship for me. And so like, how am I stewarding it? Because like with my kids, there might be more energy intense seasons. So then what am I doing to fill back up? A key thing for me has been, I have margins everywhere. I don't do anything back to back. I did for a season, like just rushing. And then my nervous system is like completely activated and it doesn't know how to calm itself down. And so just creating margins, creating longer drive times now that we started driving places again, like just creating bigger margins. And then to your guys' point about like other people, I've really looked into places where people are pouring into me. So I'm pouring out a lot to others. And so intentionally being around people not only that give me energy, but like where it's understood that it's their job to pour in and nurture me. Like that's the definition of the relationship. I'm not here to give. I am here, and you are going to pour into me. And those spaces have been really valuable for me as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
Jason, I want to know your answer.
Well, I mean, one was talking to people. You know, I picked up the piano again. I have a whole long story about that I won't get into, but I'm getting pretty good at it. You know, I've got some Harry Connick Jr. staples under my belt. I'm learning some jazz. I learned most of the La La Land soundtrack on the piano, and that's a lot of fun. And but you know, it's funny. It's amazing how quickly I can turn something into work. You know, and so I think a question that I want to ask people to think about as they're thinking about burnout is think about the things that you reflexively do to rest. Everyone has things reflexively that they do to rest. And I'm not happy to admit this, but like during the pandemic, especially, you know, the world shut down. I live alone. Work was done. I go see the sunset. I live next to the water. I go watch the sunset. And then I'd watch like 3 episodes of Friends. And to be totally honest, I mean, one is because I have an appetite for the industry and I really enjoy watching pop culture things and seeing how did it work at that time and that kind of thing. So that's interesting. But really, if you were to ask me, is that energizing in a way that takes me where I want to go? The answer is no. And so say, hey, what do you, but that's a reflex. Or like looking at my phone. I reflexively kill time by scrolling on Instagram. And of course, during the pandemic, Instagram was a place for like kittens and pictures of people's food. And suddenly everyone became an expert on race relations and virology and and government and politics and all these kinds of things. It became very like, oh God, I don't enjoy looking at Instagram anymore. But it didn't stop me from looking at it. So a thing that was a place of rest suddenly became a place of anxiety. And so look at the things that you do reflexively and then ask the question, is it working? And another question, even if it is working, whatever that means, ask, and are there any things that are better? And I think, you know, so as we all kind of step into that process, it'd be much better for me to let go of the gram and step in and grab my phone and call my sister. That would probably lead to not only more deeper relationship with my sister, but also decrease my anxiety most of the time, depending on what Amanda and I talk about. It'll have a net positive result. So those are some things that I'm learning and would love for our audience to think about. Dan, how about you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I thanks for answering the question. No, I absolutely. I think the thought of counterbalancing and noticing, like, it's like there's water in a toilet. You shouldn't drink it there. Like, you know, there are forms of rest that are pretty, you know, you might get a little sustenance from it, but it's probably not the most powerful thing to do. So, yeah.
I think some other ideas for people out there is think about how you're wired. Like I'm very routine oriented. And so then actually a really healthy rest for me is to break that routine up, whether that's a 24-hour wilderness camping trip or like, it's amazing to me how quickly 24 hours can go by if I'm in routine versus if I break up the routine, it's like, is this a week long? And it's amazing how refreshing that can be, not only when you come back to your work vision. It's like, oh my gosh, I see it with fresh eyes. If you have no routine at all in your day-to-day, then maybe what are some routine restful activities that you can do that you can look forward to every week that are almost those, hey, I don't get any of that in my work life. Great. That can be a real safety for you on the back end.
Well, and all of this, and just to wrap things up, first of all, thanks everyone, and maybe we'll do probably longer conversations around rest and energy, and dive deeper into practical tips. For those of you who are wanting an hour of that conversation, you might be a little disappointed, but we wanted to present this as a conversation because we know a lot of our teams, burnout's happening all over the country and all over the world anyway. That's, you know, they're calling it the Great Resignation. People are resigning, retiring, rethinking their life, deciding to work less, et cetera. And so for those of us who are still in the game a little bit and still advocating and growing and building and creating in the world, it's important for us to be thinking about how to do that well. And the thing I want to say in closing to our listeners is, you know, we talked about the costs of meta performance and all this kind of thing. I do want to close with the benefits of growth. You know, all 4 of the people on this call, our financial lives are radically different than they were 5 years ago. Our relational lives are in a radically different place than they were 5 years ago. You know, Dan's marriage is beautifully unrecognizable, and it was fine before, but him and Laura just really create this beautiful relationship. Amanda with her sons has created a new relationship with her family. Jon and I are still, doing whatever we're doing in the singles. And not only that, but the companies that we work with who have pursued meta performance inspire us. When people are doing happy dances in the hallways because they got bonuses because of their performance enhancement in the companies that they work in, that's vacations they're paying for. That's acts of charity that they are able to do. That's education funds. It's a little peace of mind for their children's future. There's something really beautiful about leaning into what are you capable of. There's something really beautiful about trying, LeBron's in the NBA, he sleeps 12 hours a day. What's your version of the NBA for you? And striving to be, for us, it's being in the NBA of coaching, because these three people are some of the best coaches in the world. And I actually mean that. That's not flattery. The three people that you've been listening to are some of the best coaches in the world. And if you're a leader, if you're a CEO, be the best CEO in the world. If you are strive to be the best CEO in the world. If you are a manager, strive to be the best manager in the world. If you are supporting someone else and you're on a team, whatever role you play, strive to be the best at that in the world. Grow, reinvent what you're capable of, and then with that, learn how to rest. And what we want to promise you is that the journey is really worth it, and it's going to give you a full range of exposure to where we're all going to die someday. And when that happens, we can say we left it all on the field. So thank you, Dan, Jon, and Amanda. We hope this is valuable for you, and we hope you have a great rest of your week. I guess I'm saying goodbye to you all, but so thanks everyone for listening. Everyone can say goodbye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye.